mentioned Snow Crash earlier on, so
yes.
Stevenson. What other authors do you like reading?
Oh God!
You mentioned a few others that you should have.
Well, I see now I've blanked. William Gibson, obviously. I'm completely predictable. You know, Carl Hiaasen from the detective side, Lawrence Change from the detective side, Lois McMaster Bujold, I can't pronounce her name. Does anybody know?
Yes, I
Was that right? Okay. So anyway, I think she's amazing. Who else? Oh God, it just goes on and on. At the moment, I'm a big fan of Stephen Erickson, all of Malazan stuff. I think it's wonderful. I love that because of the depth of it, the anthropology and archaeology he's getting in there. I have a sense all the time that if I could just pay slightly more attention all the time and maybe go back and read the whole sequence over and over again a few more times, I'd start to put together what's going to happen next. Because I'd know exactly, because he's got all the clues in there. And if you feel you could actually just go and dig a bit in his world, you would find all the answers are actually waiting, which I think is a wonderful thing to create with a big, enormous scale of work like that. Alistair Reynolds does that too, I think, with Revelation Space and so on. I think that sense of time as something in which monsters lurk is fantastic. And indeed, in a tiny, tiny way, it crops up in the new book. History is a pit from which things crawl.
Another thing you mentioned was the 100 Stories for Haiti, and that's, you want to tell us something about that, and maybe about charity in general in your life?
100 Stories for Haiti was just a completely spontaneous thing. Greg McQueen tweeted me and said, you may know there's been an earthquake in Haiti. And I said, yes. And he said, well, I'm going to do something about it. And I said, fantastic. And he said, will you give me a story for this book? And I said, yes. Absolutely, immediately. Anything else you need? He said, yes. Can I have an introduction? I said, yes. And that was it. It was done. That was my whole involvement. It was just completely trivial. Greg, on the other hand, who is a hero, apparently people were turning around to him and saying, oh, it'll never work. Oh, shush. Give over. Of course, it's just such a fantastic thing to do. And I'm just a bit horrified that so many people seem to have said to him, no, go on. What does it cost you? Nothing. You know, and so he pulled it together and made it happen. And it's out now. 100 Stories for Haiti. With a story from me, an introduction, and 99 other stories from just any number of different writers, and many of them here, actually. We got anybody in the room? No? Okay, well, many of them are people. They're in the other room. So that's 100 Stories for Haiti, and I mean, you know,
That's available on your order through your website?
It is. There's a link on my website, yes, to of course, to the 100 Stories for Haiti website, which I think is probably 100storiesforhaiti.com. But in any case, it's an ebook and you can get it print on demand. And I think they may also be limited run print copies. But it's because the whole thing was done through the web. It's very web findable. And I think probably if you were to type Harkaway Haiti into Google, I can't imagine, unless the people of Harkaway, Australia, are doing something for Haiti, you would find. I can't necessarily Haiti. I give up. Other charities. Obviously, my wife's the executive director of Reprieve, which is a human rights charity. They do death penalty work and they get people out of secret prisons in Guantanamo and so on, which is quite something. And so I spend a lot of time kind of helping out with that, and so on, which is just amazing and extraordinary. I have met a guy called Murat, who's a German-Turkish guy. And Murat, if you've seen the picture of a guy coming down the steps of the plane in an orange jumpsuit with his hands with a steel rod between them and this huge mop of hair and a beard and so on, that's Murat coming down. And they're still using that photograph. What you don't know is that habitually Murat has kind of sandy blonde hair. He looks basically like a kind of German wrestler. And he's completely clean shaven, but because they kept him in Guantanamo, wouldn't let him shave, he ended up looking like this. And that was the image they wanted you to have as you came down the plane back to Germany, was the picture of this guy with the crazy hair, because they wanted him to look Old Testament and frightening, so they could justify the fact that there's absolutely nothing going on there, you know, but they kept him in Guantanamo for 6 years. And the stuff that you encounter in the context of that I hear about through Claire is absolutely breathtaking. And there was a thing a while ago that the British government confessed that we had sort of semi-accidentally, rendered a couple of guys who were taken on the battlefield in Iraq and rounded them up to the Americans, which is a breach of their rights in various ways. It's against international law, this one, I think. And but they wouldn't tell anybody who they were. They'd admitted that they'd done this thing, which was wrong, but they wouldn't admit who they were because it would breach their data protection rights. And you're just like, yeah, come here. Data protection. That's almost as good as I found out the other day. I still don't know if this is true, but apparently when you fly at the moment, you obviously have to take your shoes off. Not, you know. And then there was a sort of period where some people had to take their shoes off and some didn't. And I couldn't figure out why that was. I was a bit bewildered. And I asked one of the security people, and she said, "Oh no, what's happened is it turns out to be a health and safety violation if we ask everyone to take their shoes off." So we can only ask selected people. So what we do is when we're really busy, we select people. But when we're not, we just select everyone, one by one, and ask them to take their shoes off. The whole sort of health and safety violation stroke data protection act thing is ways of, just weird.
Does that mean you can refuse to take your shoes off on the basis of health and safety?
Probably, but they can probably just refuse to let you through.
Yeah.
Depends on the floor, actually, I'd imagine, because the floor is very slippy and you could fall and hurt yourself.
I think the key issue actually is that if you do take your shoes off and then you fall, you can sue.
Yes.
You know, although how much of
That's
a Charlie
a potential money-making scheme.
I'll get the polish and you wear the woolly socks.
Katie, just to remind you, this is actually being filmed, so